If you would like to get your song reviewed, dear listener, there's the Filthy Capitalist option. As Sori says, $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to be a part of the alliance. You don't have to be part of the group.
Wait a minute.
And the biggest thing is you don't have to wait. You hop, skip, and jump right in front of everybody. $125 gets you there. You do that 3 times, and then get mashed down to the $75 rate for perpetuity.
Yes!
Also, there is a band review option. So if you've got a band and you're trying to get your band some exposure, hit me up at vinsori@gmail.com, and I'll show you the details about how to pull that off.
You can also jump on Patreon, and there is a option on the tiers to be able to get your band reviewed. Yep. Obviously, we can't lie to you, so we can't guarantee a positive review. Get what you get.
It's just rubbish.
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 That's British for garbage.
My favorite is the community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon. You get to join an alliance. The alliance joins their points together, and that helps determine what songs that we do.
The alliances hang out on Discord.
Message me on Patreon to get the link.
And they do all kinds of other cool things. They do Minecraft, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It's really a community within the community. Anybody can go on the village, facebook.com/Vin and Sori. There's 160,000+ people on the channel. What's cool about the Discord is that it offers a real opportunity for community connection, friendship, that type of thing.
And it's on Discord, so if you're not a Facebook person, it's for you.
You start off at $1.
Right.
Plus you get exclusives. Sori and I are working on a song. So the first 15 seconds of that was on Patreon. Also, at $15 tier and above, when we actually debut the video, they're going to be there live with us. There you are, dear listener.
Buy our merch.
Buy our merch indeed. A child shall lead them.
To buy our merch.
Yes, dear listener. Yes, dear listener. Yes, dear listener.
All right.
Type 22. If you can hear me, you should be able to. We have a very, very, very special broadcast here. Shout out to Negative Vibes. Shout out to Berto. Shout out to Riv. Here we go.
Whispered is the
Black
first
Queen
song
in the
on
house.
our list.
The song hasn't been released yet. We've had some technical difficulties, Black Queen, but don't worry about it. It'll come soon one day, inshallah. Okay. Here we go, guys. Here we go.
Okay.
What's the name of this alliance?
So,
is there a specific type of alliance? What's up? What's up,
different
Pony?
Skies. Actually, I wonder. The stream name is reference the fact that all 5 of these bands are from different countries, and all 5 play different subgenres of metal. For my 3, Whispered, Sakura Omen. This is a symphonic melodic death metal band from Pirkanmaa, Finland, but you would never know it. All their songs are about Japanese culture. Specifically during the shogunate or the
shogunate.
Okay.
The samurai stuff.
And such. This particular song makes use of some traditional Japanese instruments. The song mentions Izanami, who is the creator deity of both creation and death in Japanese mythology, as well as Shinto, mother goddess. She and her brother husband Izanagi are the last of the 7 generations of primordial deities that manifested after the formation of heaven and earth. Izanami and Izanagi are held to be the creators of the Japanese archipelago, and the Babe, you should read this. And the progenitors of many deities, which include the sun goddess Materasu, the moon deity Tsukumu, and the storm god Sasanu. The song is from their most recent 2016 album, Metsutan, Songs of the Void. Okay?
Alright, so Whispered is the first. Do we have a stream icon? Did they give us one? No?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so the first song is Whispered by Sakura Omen, which is very... Okay, so this is a Swedish band, you said?
Well, they're from Finland.
They're from Finland.
Yeah.
Holy smoke. Shout out to Ritzy Blitz.
They do Japanese culture.
Culture. Okay, Whispered. Here we go. Let's do it right now. That's pretty. Whoa.
Wow.
I am not certain of the wisdom of starting with this song because now the other
Does set
songs...
the bar rather high.
now the other songs are going to be compared and have to live up to this one. Holy smokes. So on the one hand, it's odd that a Finnish band would, be
Do
so
that.
deeply into this.
Yeah.
I mean, are they called Sakura? Sakura Omen? Or, no, Whispered is the name of the band. But it's incredible that they would be that much into that culture. And initially I was like, how strange. But then I remembered as a kid, I was completely and totally entrenched in Japanese culture.
Really?
Because of martial arts.
Oh, yeah.
So when I first came to this country, my stepfather, the first movie I saw, I don't even know if the name of the it was Bruce Lee, and the last guy he had to fight was Chuck Norris.
Okay.
And Bruce Lee was like this little small, Asian dude.
Believe it or not, I know who both of those people
And Chuck
are.
Norris is Chuck Norris.
Right.
And so I was like, yo, there's no way that this little dude is gonna even give this guy a problem. And then Bruce Lee did his thing, and I was like, yo, what is he doing? And my stepdad was like, that's karate, son. That's karate. So I was like 3.5, 4 years old. It's like one of my first memories ever. And man, when I saw that was it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do karate for the rest of my life. So we replayed that Bruce Lee thing. I started doing the kicks and all that shit. And obviously that's what set me on the trail of the martial arts. But as I got older, and you start going to libraries and stuff, that's all I got. And I particularly got this book. I'll never forget. I was in the 4th grade at Port Malabar Elementary School in Florida, Palm Bay, Florida, and I rented out this samurai book from the library, and I just completely fell in love with the culture.
Really?
And, oh yeah, you couldn't touch another man's sword and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Legit, they'd kill you. The way that they were. I mean, obviously a lot of this stuff is legendary. The ability to master your body, to be impervious to pain.
Mm-hmm.
All types of shit like that. I remember going out to my tree and hitting the tree, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna deaden my whatever, and I'm gonna unify my mind. And bless God, my mother stopped. What are you doing? I was like, Mom, you don't understand what's happening here. I was like, you don't understand, And I just lived in that culture from that book, man. I loved that book. I read that book so many times.
What was the name of it?
I don't even know. It's The Way of the Samurai or something like that. I forgot what it was. But
wasn't there a movie of that?
Yeah, we saw it with
Yeah.
Tom Cruise. With Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the
I think it was The Last Samurai.
Yeah, The Last Samurai. Yeah, which that movie was pretty depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is always going to be a conflict with me to the day that I die. My attraction to violence and the Peter called this out a year and a half ago, something like that, when I was just talking about being in the arena and the love of being in such an extreme situation and seeing who's gonna quit or who's gonna break first or whatever, and getting past the point, this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions people have about fighters or martial artists or whatever. There does come a point to where you don't care if you win or lose. You're just gonna see it through. And that to me was the purest form of martial arts.
Okay.
Because when I read the book, and like you're looking at the culture and things of that nature, and you know, a lot of these guys, after, you know, it was over, they just couldn't live in the world anymore because the dedication, the honor, the sense of I am going to succeed or I am going to die. Like when you're around people like that and then that's taken from you, I understand. And you know, I mean, to this day, a lot of people who've been in like armed conflicts and things like that, like that's gone, and they, you know, they miss it. But you know, obviously there is really real human cost to partaking in that stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's romantic. It's such a romantic idea to me because of how extreme my personality is, and you know, asking yourself, like, do you have anything left at all? Like, is there anything left for you? Is there, you know, can you get up one more time or whatever? Like I said, you get past that point where you care if you win or lose. Like there was one, you know, in the UFC, you know, his nickname is Stylebender, and he was undefeated. I mean, he recently lost, but that's because he went up a weight class and all that. I don't really count that, and he didn't like get knocked out or anything. He just lost on points, which, I mean, he lost on points. But anyway, he was basically, I mean, it was one of these things where guys were they were just both wailing on each other, and none of them would quit. And the final round came on, and his mouth is like this big, like he was swollen. I mean, his whole face. And he says, he looked at the guy across him. He says, "You're not going to beat me. I'm prepared to die." And he talked about that on the Rogan, on Joe Rogan. He said, because Rogan was like, obviously very inspired by that, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I was prepared to die." But like, you don't have those. That's not an everyday situation.
Yeah.
But there are certain situations where it gets so extreme that your investment in the fight becomes something too precious to just let go and quit. And so you do hit this point where it's like, okay, I'd rather, you know, I'm at peace with I might not make it out of this situation. There have been other situations where it's like, yo, this is really bad, and it's not like that, and you're scared, and you're, you know, whatever. But I've had a couple experiences like that in my life. I'd say 3 times where I hit this kind of, you know how runners talk about like runner's high or whatever?
Yeah.
Like I hit this certain point where I was like, yo, like it wasn't I'm a badass or whatever. It was just your entire intention just becomes this. When I say pure, I mean just one thing, right? That's what pure means, is one thing. Like you know, you have pure oil. All you have is oil, nothing. Like your will becomes purified, and all you care about is that situation. And it's one of the worst experiences of my life, having those situations, because I can never get back there ever again. And I do miss that. I do miss that, but
Yeah.
you know, obviously, you know, but it's always been a major contradiction within myself, and I don't have a problem with saying, you know, whatever, contradictory, hypocritical, inconsistent, whatever. I have no problem saying, like, look, Jesus is a standard nonviolence, and I enjoyed the fuck out of that situation, but it was in an event of extreme violence. And that's why I said, like, it's the worst thing that's happened to me, not because it was such a bad situation. You know what's funny when people talk about trauma? Like, I look at those 3 situations, and I'm not traumatized by them at all. There are other situations where probably, if you know, when I really think about it, I say, yeah, that's probably traumatic. because like I can't get it out of my, you can't, whatever, you can't get out of your head. But there those situations I can't get out of my head either, but for a different reason. It's like the first time you met your girlfriend or something. Like I can't get that out of my head that way. But so like listening to this song was kind of like is kind of like meeting an old friend type of situation, and but that kind of thing is I'm sure there's like an evolutionary explanation for that, considering our ancestors were dealing with like all types of wildebeest or whatever, tricera, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what folks were dealing with back in the day, but cradle of civilization. But like you kind of had to have that kind of gear, where that kind of violence, where evolutionarily speaking, like you were able to enjoy it when it got to a certain point. Because if you were only going off of the natural fear instinct, then we would never be able to survive as a species. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very I fell in love with that whole aesthetic, and chasing that feeling again is I've known people that haven't been able to adjust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a feeling that it's impossible to describe. It's impossible to describe.
Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Feeling.
Fascinating is the wrong word for it, but that you have something that your religion says is completely wrong, and you still are having a fascination with it, and you don't seem condemned because of that.
No, I don't condemn myself for it, because I understand that everybody has human weakness, and with some people it's greed. We've got somebody in the household that's a very greedy person. With some guys it's sex, and with me it's violence. And I understand that about myself, and I understand why it's wrong, and one of the things that we're starting to do this with the active imagination stuff. I got years ago, it was basically, I felt like God said, listen, just try to understand why people do what they do. Don't worry about whether it's bad or good. Like, people are set to bad. The question is, why do people choose the bad that they choose? What led up to that? And it was fascinating, because I didn't get the vibe like, oh, you're supposed to look into this so that you could change yourself. I mean, that's obviously there, but it was just understanding myself in and of itself was a goal. And then when you look at other people, you go, just understanding other people in and of itself is a goal. Not so you can change them, although they're people, we all need to change, like constantly change, obviously. But like, understanding why we do the things that we do in and of itself is a virtue, if nothing else happens. And that's kind of how I look at it. But Gutter God said something really interesting. You ever consider the line between ego and courage? That is fascinating. That is a really fascinating concept, because like we're watching
that is really interesting. Yeah,
we're watching a show right now.
Yeah,
and the protagonist, in my view, is a hero. But when things don't go well, they go after her and say, you're doing this because they're basically saying you're an egomaniac. And, you think that your way is the right way. But at the same time, like, they follow her, though. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's kind of the role of the hero, is that on the one hand, when everything's going down, everybody wants you. But then when the thing doesn't go well, then they turn on you and say that you're an egomaniac. But the fact of the matter is, none of us has ever done anything purely for one reason. When you talk about what purity is. And so it's like, that line is almost impossible to negotiate. Especially, it's always fascinating talking to Peter, because before I met him,
I really only had one mentality about this stuff. I thought pretty much everybody thought the way that I did, but was just not brave enough or whatever enough to do what needed to be done. But having real deep conversations with Pete, it wasn't like that. It's not that I don't think he's a coward. He just he relates to violence and he relates to virtue differently than, but I asked him, like, look, it's 3:00 in the morning and the knocks at the door, like, you're going to send your girl? And he said, well, of course not. But he lives in an environment where that's not something that's going to happen a lot. So to him, that's just a theoretical question. So bravery is not the issue for him. The issue for him is the concept of violence in and of itself and the obvious, I don't want a love affair. He didn't use that term. He said something about, he basically said, like, you said you left that stuff behind, but it's obviously still a bigger part of you than you realize. And of course, that's a very interesting thing when one of your friends says something like that. But yeah, so listening to that music and all that was amazing. On top of the fact that at the very, very beginning when the song opened, the lead guitarist went on a crazy run, and it was so. I asked Kel, I'm like, yo, is that synth or is that him?
Yeah,
and the reason I asked is because it wasn't because it was fast. It was because it was so precise. Like, if anybody that like tries to play fast, that like precision is like the major problem with that stuff. Like, I can show anybody basic scales or whatever, and I say, okay, now speed that up to 20, whatever beats per minute. Like, anybody can basically do it and generally get it right. It's just how precise. So like the way that the dude was playing, to have that kind of precision, to me was insane. Like,
what did Kel say? Did he say?
It was just guitar.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just guitar. It was.
That's pretty ridiculous.
Pretty ridiculous to me. The shredded part that repeats later in the song I like because it sort of evoked the visual of a storm of leaves, Sakura blossoms falling from the trees. Yeah.
Ooh.
And Sakura means that's the cherry blossoms, that Japan is known for. Which I also think is really interesting. Like, when you watch a lot of Japanese or samurai movies, like, yeah, there's the war and the blood and the gore, but there's always like, it's kind of like a slow down part in a speed metal song. There's always that thing with the beauty of the cherry blossoms and the pink and and it's just weird because even the guys are into it. It's not like, oh, this is woman stuff. Like, you read like samurai literature and poetry, like they talk about. There was one, the translation was I don't know, but I still remember from that book where he basically said, he essentially said, I shed the blood of our enemies to water the blood of the cherries or whatever. And he was talking about, like, the whole thing was like, I'm part of this whole thing because he was saying he was protecting the cherry blossom trees or whatever, but obviously the trees were a stand-in for the people that he was fighting for. But it was just really amazing, and it's things that on the Western side we would say are feminine, the pink and the poetry and the beauty and all that. But those guys, it didn't seem like there's any contradiction in their minds between the two, and like, just
maybe it's like the
really
ocean for
stuff.
us. You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean?
Both men and women alike enjoy the ocean, and it's not considered feminine. It's just a part of nature that, we live on the coast, so
right.
It's something that all of us can appreciate, and we don't see it as a feminine thing.
Right.
Like, maybe that's the ocean to them, the way that the tree blossoms, the way that the blossoms fall to the ground in the wind and stuff like that. You know? I don't know.
It's funny. There's this. So the Gracie family in the UFC. I mean, the Gracies basically started UFC. So all the Gracie guys and the dad did this thing called Vale Tudo. Vale Tudo is literally like no holds barred underground shit. And you hit people in the groin, people die, all types of shit. UFC is not Vale Tudo. UFC has a lot of rules. You can't headbutt somebody. You can't poke people in the eye. You can't kick them in the junk. You can't head kick them when they're down. There's a lot of things you cannot do. People think that UFC is like no holds barred. It's not. It's extremely regulated. Vale Tudo is not. But that's where the Gracies came from. They came from Vale Tudo culture.
Oh.
And so then they went into entered UFC and they just wrecked shop. They just destroyed everybody because nobody had a ground game at that point. Nobody understood jiu-jitsu. Like these guys. I mean, they brought jiu-jitsu essentially to the world via UFC.
Wow.
And so, and you know, Royce Gracie was just a skinny guy, like Dorian skinny, but not. You know, Dorian's got definition and some muscle. Like Royce is just completely skinny, and you're looking at him in this gi, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's gonna get wrecked. And he just like went through the entire. He just went through the entire UFC on multiple occasions.
Wow. Okay.
And then he ran into a guy named Sakuraba, which is funny because Sakura is and Sakuraba went through all the Gracies, beat them all.
Really?
One of them, he broke the guy's elbow. He had the guy in a Kimura, and he snapped his elbow, and the guy wouldn't quit.
Really?
He wouldn't quit, and it was dislocated and everything, and he was mad that and then he said, well, why didn't you quit? And he said, well, I got myself in a Kimura, so that was my punishment. Like, but it's just very interesting. Like Sakuraba, yeah, you're right. They didn't start the UFC. They just dominated the UFC and brought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the world basically from that system. But yeah, Sakuraba came in and just like went through all the Gracies. I mean, he just it was unbelievable to me. Like, and of course I was happy because to me, my understanding of martial arts was it was an Asian thing. So I'm seeing these Brazilian people, take out Japanese people. I was upset. So when Sakuraba went in there and took care of business, shout out to Zach Murdoch. When Sakuraba went in there and took care of business, bro, I was like so happy. I was like, yes, because I felt like the honor was restored.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, I'm closer to Brazil than I am to Japan, but I didn't care, man, because to me, martial arts was a sacred thing that I wanted the Asians to have the martial arts. I don't know why, but I did. Anyway, I love this song. It brought a lot of that stuff to my mind. I loved it. I loved it. This song's a 10 for me, man.
Whoa.
This song's a 10 for me.
This one is a 9 for me.
I love this song. Holy smoke! I just don't know how the other bands are gonna have to not that they compete. Who cares? But anyway, I really love this thing. Okay. The night has just begun, dear listener. We shall return with another commercial break. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.